Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hey legends, Big Les here from the Big LEZ'S Rugby League podcast. Just want to come on here and do a quick little disclaimer. Any signings that have happened over the past 2 weeks, we will not be aware about on the podcast. We did record this one 2 weeks back, and I've scheduled it to come out over the next few weeks. So any signings that have happened in the past 2 to 3 weeks, we will not be aware of those signings on the podcast. Without further ado, though, let's get straight into it. Part 3 of the season reviews. Can't wait.
We go to the Melbourne Storm, who obviously they were on the ladder as first, but we will talk about them second, obviously, since they ended up losing that grand final to the Sydney Roosters, but they did finish first. They had 19 wins with 5 losses, 692 points scored, 449 points against. Mate, Melbourne, we thought they were probably going to win that grand final right up until the end.
Bless you. Melbourne. What a team they were this season. I was back at Penrith, so I was death riding them in the grand final. Not gonna lie. But they were pretty much the form team of the comp, weren't they? They come first, final premiers. Their depth and new players or emerging players, or I guess like a lot of these other teams that I've mentioned, ones that have kind of come up while we've had injuries. It's just been outstanding. They had to deal with some significant players that were out for a long period of time, and it's just next man up, and they just keep going and getting better and better. And their consistency in making finals football needs to be studied, because it is ridiculous. What they've been able to do over the last 20 odd years. It's just stupid at this point.
It really has, mate. They were third last year, obviously, so even improving from that and getting to this stage, Jerome Hughes. 3 years ago, he was a fullback. 5 or 6 years ago, he was a fullback for the Gold Coast Titans and the Cowboys. It's just insane to see his player progression going from a fullback that was barely cracking first grade to an elite level halfback in the competition as well, and how much that halfback position has changed now with him obviously making that transition.
Oh yeah, it's crazy to see how far a player like Jerome Hughes has come, as you mentioned, playing fullback for the Cows and the Gold Coast Titans, somebody that would have really never been looked at seriously or never really thought to become anything. And to string together the season and seasons he's had and win the Dally M medal, it's just it's so good to see, and love it.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's been so good to watch this player progression. And look, we sort of spoke about it when we were talking about Manly, but good to see a good friend of the show, Ryan Pappenhausen, string some games together too. Obviously had a bit of injuries towards the start and midpoint of the season, but the back end strung some games together, and Melbourne reaped the rewards of it.
Oh, it was just so good to see him back out there. Like, he is just so unlucky. But like I was at that game last year. It was... I forgot. No, it was the semi, the first game against Broncos, I think it was, at Suncorp there, and he went down again, and you just like, people in the crowd are talking about compound fractures, this and that. So for him to go out with another break and to come back, and he broke his leg or something again this year as well. It's absolutely insane that the resilience of that man just to keep it going and play some great footy. And I think he has been the difference for Melbourne Storm when he is in that team. They are a different team. I'd love to see Sua Palungo in there as well, but it's just not Ryan Pappenhausen. His running game and some of those set plays that they have, especially linking up with, Hughes, he's just been, outstanding.
He's such a great mover, mate, and just the speed that he has just helps it so much. And making split decisions with his speed, whether he goes inside or outside the back row or on arrow sets, obviously spread sets for the guys playing at home. But just his ability to, just the way he moves his body, his acceleration and speed, he's just such a freak of the game. Munster as well, to have that long period out, and then for him to come back in and obviously do what he did this season was huge.
Oh yeah, and it was actually a concern that I had with him coming back into that team. Throughout this podcast, pretty much talking about chemistry and how those teams gel together. And I was a little bit worried they were going to have a bit of a fall off with him coming back in. Obviously, Munster, he is that cream of the crop type player built for those big games. But it just reminded me of a few seasons ago when they had Nico Hines back there at fullback, and Paps came back, I think, right towards the end of the season. It just kind of derailed them. I was a little bit concerned with that, but he got his stuff together and just started playing some ridiculous Cameron Munster football. And yeah, what a weapon to have, pretty much locked away for most of the season.
Well, you know what? I think Jerome Hughes is a big part as to why he came back so easily, because he just made it so easy. Munster would just sort of try and get back into games, use his running game to his advantage and sort of build on those combinations. And Hughes would take full responsibility of how that side was run. Obviously, a lot of the opportunities came off the back of Jerome Hughes for those first few games, and Munster just sort of played off the back of that. And then once he was comfortable, he sort of just came back in, did his own thing, and introducing Cameron Munster, probably one of the best 5'8" in the game. So really, really solid year for the Storm. Before we get into some other, shining lights for them, we'll quickly run through the stats. I know that I am nearly dying here, getting to that fifth or sixth hour now. I can't even keep track. So let's, blast through these last two teams. Attacking stats. Points per game, 29 points per game. It's second. Line breaks, 6.7 per game. It's first. Tackle bust, 36 per game. That's fifth. Meters per game, 1,461. That's sixth. Offloads, 9.9 per game. That's sixth. Errors, 9.8 per game. That's 13th. Completion rate, 80%. We then move to defensive stats. Points conceded, 18.2 per game. 16th. Missed tackles, 28.9 per game, 17th. Penalties conceded, 51. It's not 51. 5.1 penalties conceded per game. 51 would have been a bit outrageous. That's 10th. And then sin bins, 7, and that's 7th. What's the big standout there for you in the stats?
Well, it would have been if their penalties conceded with 51. Man, could you imagine that? There wouldn't be a stadium left after Ballyache went off that hard. Yeah, I think it just really shows Melbourne Storm. Their attack is just next to none. That's been the highlight and a big lot of talk throughout the season, just how elite that spine is. They will punish you if you slip up at the slightest, and they showed that over and over. Same defensively as well. They're so hard to crack and try to get through. So yeah, no, they were great. Again, their completion rate about there with a lot of the other teams, coming in sixth. So yeah, more than enough, obviously, when you've got a strike like they did.
Yeah, totally. And we talk about the spine and how damaging the spine is, mate. I don't think the spine has strung together more than 20 games together as a pairing as well. It's insane how well they gel with the limited time they've had to actually gel as a full spine pairing. And then obviously talking about fullback 6, 7, and 9. And look, a guy we haven't spoken about yet is the 9 Cameron Munster, in Harry Grant. That's how you know it's been a long time, guys. We are starting to mix up the players. But Harry Grant, he's been outstanding this year. A really solid year again from him, and really stood up in his final series too, which was nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah, we're starting to get towards the end of it now. I'm going to start calling him Cameron Smith or something like that. But no, Harry Grant, he had, for his standard, it's kind of hard because he's just set the bar so high. Maybe a slower start, I think, towards the season. I think Origin-wise, at least for me, maybe not his best Origin series. But being the captain of the team this year for the Melbourne Storm, and like you said, towards the end, I think really after Origin, he just caught fire and just didn't stop and just powered all the way through. And we saw that in all the efforts, in particular the grand final that almost ended up being Penrith against Harry Grant. Like the effort he put in and really led from the front, he was outstanding.
Yeah, mate, 100%. He was great for Melbourne this year. His service defensively, making those big plays. Harry Grant was outstanding. Shining lights, as far as shining lights go, I might take the lead on this one and throw a name at ya. Tyron Wishart. What a season he had, particularly the back end. Huge.
Yeah, I had the exact same one down. He was plug and play. You could put him in anywhere, and he was just about the best in that position. He was massive that period of time that Munster was out. Outstanding. He was just massive for them. What a weapon to have in the 14 position. You can have him anytime. Any team would be lucky to have him. Massive.
Huge season for him, and then particularly that performance against Penrith as well, where he stepped pretty much the entire forward pack to score a try right under the post. What a season. Really great to watch his progression. And, I think he's just proving how important the utility position is becoming in our game. It's almost like you're adding another guy to the starting side, even though he's coming off the bench. It's just as important as any bloke that starts, in my opinion. I think that the utility position has grown so important now.
Absolutely, and just about time, I think he must be hanging around with Munster too much because he just loves that show and go, doesn't he? He's throwing dummies that you just know it's coming, but it worked every time, just about. And I guess shining light, we really don't need to get super deep on it. We already kind of have with him, but you Jerome Hughes, that's hard to go past. He's the best player of the season. It doesn't get much better than that. But Wishy though, absolute weapon.
I'll throw another rookie at ya, who I think will definitely be in the starting centres going into next year. Jack Howarth. What a season Jack Howarth has had. And particularly going from a guy that couldn't crack the first grade squad and he's on reportedly 500K. For him to come in and just blow it off the park, coming in as a back rower, we were sort of 50-50 on him. Was he going to sit in reserve grade for the rest of the year? And then he comes in, goes into the centres, and is arguably one of the better left centres in the game, and absolutely destroyed Sifa Talakai with 10 tackle busts against him against the Sharks. Fuck, what a season he has had.
No, he was an absolute gun. Like the way that he just linked up out there, just a weapon. Like it was very unexpected because he just wasn't somebody that you would have really seen having a definitive spot in that team. But boy, did he solidify that. He was such a key part of their success throughout the season.
Yeah, totally, mate. Just such a huge inclusion. Grant Anderson is a name I want to throw your way as well. I know that he obviously wasn't in the side going into the final series, obviously, because Xavier Coates came back into the team. But far out, he is a first grader for sure. And I think teams need to be going after him right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He was another one. Like he linked up very well with Howard for some time. It's going to be tricky to kind of sit him into that team. So I think you're right. If there is a team looking for an outside back, he could be very well your man to get into your team.
Could you imagine if he rocks up at Penrith, plays on the right wing there?
Yeah, that'd be having nightmares then.
Mate, stop it. Or even Toto going over to the right side and him, jumping on the left there with big Paul Alamotti. Fuck, that would be a combination and a half.
Have fun with that.
Yeah, Jesus. Suafalongo, I mean, a really nice, season for him as well. Obviously didn't get too much first grade in, but played a little bit of the year on the wing, off the bench at 14. What did you make of his season?
I love that man so much. He's so exciting to watch. Anytime Suafalongo was playing, it'd just be in multis for me. He was so good. Like I think it was that one game. He literally came on with about 4 minutes to go, scored pretty much his first touch. I remember seeing him play. It was round 27 last year against the Broncos. So it was kind of like they Broncos versus them. Now unleashed Suafalongo, and holy, he just tore us apart. But no, he's great. He's got to be in that team somewhere. It's just so difficult with the back line that they've got. I don't know. I think Storm's supposedly meant to be sitting down with him, trying to figure out what's going on with him and Ryan Pappenhausen and that. I don't think he's ever going to get the spot over Pap. So it's been a tricky spot for him. But he's so much fun. That Goosey though is just ridiculous. Some of the photos of him just like jumping through the air with his tongue out, just taking a piss, just shredding players. It's great. Mate,
that Goosey, I reckon Denton Kent would be very similar to that South Park meme with him just sitting up there like this. After watching a few of those Goosies, I'll tell you that for free. But yeah, look, he had a great season off the bench. Definitely a real headache for Craig Bellamy as well, figuring out how he fits into this team, if he fits into the roster, if they can keep him. One guy I want to mention, though, before we crack on to where they'll finish next year. And I think it's a pretty obvious answer to that second question. But Trent Liero, mate, what a season from Trent Liero at 13.
Yeah, I don't know where that come from. He was top tier, getting all the way into that Origin squad. He was just great. It's strange how Storm, they kind of get a hold of those players that no one really would think a whole lot of, and get them in their system, and what they're able to produce out of that. It's just outstanding. And I think he's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, 100%. He has been outstanding this season, obviously cracking into that Origin squad, as you said. He does. He is free to negotiate as of November 1, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens with him and his contract. But certainly a guy that I think a lot of clubs will be chasing up after that season as well there at 13. What a player. And to look back at the start of the year as well, where he was playing back row. He was probably a fringe first grader too. We didn't know if he was going to stay in first grade going into this season. It started at lock and everyone was like, fuck, this might be a bit too much for him. But especially those preseason games and those first games of the year really seemed to struggle in that position. But ever since then, he's just killed it, absolutely killed it, really turned it on, effort upon effort. The game against South Sydney for me was a huge turning point for him, where he just went to another level again, and he just really impressed. I was a big fan of Trent Liero. Mate, where do you think Storm will finish? I think they'll probably win the comp next year.
Yeah, I'm hoping they get struck down with the Penrith curse and fall out of the eight. But look, realistically, I think they're first. They're not really going to be falling any lower than that. Like you said, very well could be winning the comp next year. But yeah, that's where I'm going to put them.
We'll talk about Penrith in a second and the guys that they're losing again this year, but I think that's going to be a big factor into why we see Melbourne probably get very close. I think Melbourne learn a lot from this grand final we've just had, and I think they probably do win the comp next year. I think they're my favourites, and I've paid the price for doubting Penrith. Obviously, in that grand final, I backed Melbourne. They were in my multis. And then obviously Penrith do 4 on the trot, so it wouldn't shock me if they go 5 for 5 there, but far out. I just feel like this Melbourne Storm side, learning from this grand final we've just had, with the side that they've got, they're going to be very, very dangerous. And it'll certainly be, for me at least, depending on the draw, Melbourne and Penrith grand final. Let's move on to the premiers, though. The Penrith Panthers finishing second on the ladder, 17 wins, 7 losses, scoring 580 points and conceding 394, the best defensive team in the competition. What are your thoughts on Penrith's season? Going 4 in a row from 5 grand finals is just absolutely insane. We will never see it again.
They're just ridiculous team. No one in a million years would have ever thought this was impossible, especially in this day and age. And for them to just go on and do it season after season, year after year, like you touched on, losing the players they have, it's just crazy. And it's just an absolute wrap to the system that they've got down there. The players, the coaches, everyone involved in. I sound like I'm giving a grand final speech after winning the fight Churchill, but it's just insane what they've been able to achieve over the last 5-6 years.
Mate, we'll go through this some of the stats as well. In regards to their attacking stats, 24.1 per game. So they're actually 6th for points in a game, which is insane for the Premiers. 5.4 line breaks per game. So they're 4th for line breaks. In regard to tackle bust, they're 2nd with 38.8. Meters, they're 1st with 1,594. So they're ahead by quite a bit there in regards to the meterage. Offloads, 10 per game, which is 5th. In terms of errors, they're 12th with 9.8 per game. And then completion rate, 81%. So 3rd for completion rate. Defensively, points conceded. They conceded the least amount of points out of any team. Obviously, the best defensive side in the comp with 15.4 points conceded per game. Missed tackles, 31.1 per game, so 16th there, so very strong defensively. Penalties conceded, 5.8, so 5th there for penalties, and then 4 sin bins this year, 14th there out of every other team. What stats stands out to you the most, mate?
Got to be the defense. That's something that they just back in, day out. Like the touched on, all the talk for Melbourne was all about their spine, but I don't think Penrith really let it get to them too much because they knew they could defend it, and they proved that. As well, yeah, you said they didn't really score a ton of points, and weirdly enough, I think it was the first season that they actually, during this run, seemed somewhat but didn't know. They still ended up winning the whole damn thing. One of the ones he did touch on was the rolling around.
He cut out then for a little bit. I think that Zoom's getting as tired as us, mate.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're talking about one of the things you did mention.
Yeah. No, what did you say? Pick out.
What stat stands out to you the most?
I'll just, Are you recording again?
Yep.
Yeah. Beauty. So one of the ones that stands out the most to me, I think, like you're saying, would have to be the Beaters. It's head and shoulders above everyone else. And I guess you get that when you've got probably the best forward pack rolling around. You've got the Bash Brothers running through. It's just elite. That and the defense, it's just ridiculous. The Melbourne, they got the spine, but Penrith, they got the defense, and that's what held up when it came down to it. So, just unreal team.
Yeah, crazy. Not too much to talk about here with Penrith at all, so we might keep it a little bit light. But certainly just the best team in the competition again. They proved that. We thought that Melbourne were the best. We did, but obviously they blew it up, out of the water there in that grand final. And I mean, just looking at the guys that they've lost over the past 2 years: Critter, Spencer Leniu, Jamin Salmon, Jack Cogger. They also lost Zach Hosking, Sania Taruva they lose next year, along with Luai, Fisher Harris, and Taylor May. They also lost William Mikikau the year before that as well. I mean, so many losses for this Penrith Panthers side, and they continue to get in the same spot every single year. Just insane.
Let's go again.
You there?
And the last little bit cut out of tape again. I gotcha. What was that last bit?
The last bit was they just seem to do this every single year, even though they lose a ton of players.
Oh, yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Just to be you can put together a team that would win the comp by itself with the players that have lost. That might be the only team that could actually compete against them. So it's baffling. It's not meant to happen in this day and age, supposedly with the salary cap, but they, just managed to get it done year in, year out. So, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, mate, 100%. Such a powerful outfit. And look, as we said, they could be there yet again going into next year if they want to. Let's just go through quickly our shining lights. For me, Nathan Cleary has to be the shining light. With the injuries that he's had, he comes back and playing with that shoulder injury, throughout the grand final and in that final series as well. It's definitely going to be one of the better final series, that you do see from a team and particularly from an individual.
Yeah, it's just, he needs to go overseas and play. We need to stop with all this Nathan Cleary. He's too good. It's just ridiculous. It's kind of funny, like every single year that he's had injuries, been suspended for whatever reason, when he has his kind of mid-season service, they've gone on to win the comp. So that's going to be my tell next year, whether or not they're going to win. If he has his little origin period off or something like that, then mark him down, they'll win next year. Just ridiculous, Nathan. He's the best at the moment. He just showed it each time.
100%, mate. And he's, really getting close to that GOAT status, or at least among that conversation of those GOATs as well. What he's doing at the moment, the premierships that he's won. I mean, it's crazy to think, guys like Isaiah Yeo, Jerome Luai, Liam Martin, they've all won 4 premierships now. Liam Martin, for me, that shocks me the most, but his performance in that grand final, and particularly when he wasn't having the strongest year, or at least compared to other back rowers, he wasn't having the strongest year. For him to turn all of that around in his final series in particular, but in the grand final, huge back end of the season for Liam Martin.
He's just a monster. And you see that when he plays in New South Wales and the power that he plays with, it's next to none. And yeah, you saw exactly that in the grand final. It was a massive part of them actually winning that game, I think. But yeah, you're right. He just hit his stride when he needed to, turned up, and yeah, it was just the rest was history, I guess, for him.
In regards to shining lights, mate, for me, I think that one stands out in particular. And that's for me, it's probably a bit of a controversial one, but Lindsay Smith.
Yeah.
I thought that he was great. Coming off the bench, he obviously established himself last year. Bless you. I think we're all sneezing. Yeah. We're getting to that stage. We're getting to that stage. Lindsay Smith, coming off the bench a little bit this year, but obviously established himself last year. I thought he was great this year. Himself and Liam Henry, just the games that they were able to string together and what they were able to do, I thought that they were great. And, we talk about Fisher Harris and Leota and the impact that they have to start. We already know that now. We don't need to talk about that. What we can talk about is what they've got coming up in the future, which is two absolute powerhouse front rowers.
Yeah, they got big shoes to fill, but like you're saying, they got some elite guys coming through. Those two have had absolute breakout seasons and just really proved their ability. At different times when Fisher Harris, whether he was out injured, you could just have them slot in and the machine kept turning. So yeah, no, it is very exciting for Penrith to have players like that coming through the ranks.
And Maverick Geyer as well, a guy that proved to be super valuable throughout the year, playing a lot of footy in the centres for a period there. Really, really strong season for him.
Yeah, no, he was great as well. It was a really, really cool to see him get his debut and achieve what he did throughout the year. And yeah, exactly like you said, he very much proved his worth, and he's quite a versatile player.
They obviously do get Isaiah Papali'i and Blaze Talangi next year, which just adds to that strike. They do lose a lot of great players, Luai, Taruva, Fisher Harris. They are starting to build and sort of move with the times as well. Getting a guy like Papali'i in probably goes into the front row, to be honest, and plays a bit of a more mobile middle sort of role. But their ability not only to replace what they've lost, but to move with the times and where the game is going as well, I think has been a really underrated part of their recruitment.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, very much points towards their success. If they'd stuck, to their guns and not really changed anything, we probably wouldn't have seen this sort of success. And I think you're very right with that. Adapting with the times, probably going with that little slightly smaller, more mobile forward, coming in with Buckley. So, I'll be very interested to see if they can keep this run up.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see, mate. I've got them around the same position again, around that top four sort of spot. Where do you see them?
It'd be red not to have them 1 to 3 for me. They got to be in there. There's no reason why we won't see them in the grand final again next year.